Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, mono miliwanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful city of Irvine in the great state of California. We are delighted that you join us in our epic cross-continent adventure, and we're so honored that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcast. Our guests today are Brian, Wray, and Chris Baier. They're here to help us acknowledge OCD Week. Hey, Brian, welcome back. How are you, my friend?
Hi, good to see you.
And also welcome back. Welcome to the podcast for the first time, Chris Baier. Hey, Chris.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm super glad that you're on. Chris, you are new to the podcast, so why don't we start with you? First, basics, OCD. Obsessive compulsive disorder. Do I have the initials right?
You're all set. Yeah, OCD, that's for short, but yeah, obsessive compulsive disorder.
And tell us a little bit about that. It's more than just kids tell us about it, because I've heard all different kinds of things called OCD, and I don't know if they all qualify.
Yeah, I think it's misunderstood, and especially in pop culture, most people assume it has to be something positive, like, I like things neat or clean, so it's a good thing. When in fact, OCD is a torturous disorder that affects people from all ages. My daughter has it. She was diagnosed when she was 8 years old, and it's one of those things that can really affect the entire family, because OCD likes to rope everybody in, and there's lots of different types, and OCD can manifest in very different ways depending on your age and what might be your concerns and worries and triggers. So it can be a very debilitating disorder, and thankfully there are some therapies that some people can have to get help. But I think the overarching thing for your audience to understand is don't use OCD as an adjective.
I think that's probably pretty good advice for any disorder, or because I think when we throw a label like that or use OCD as an adjective, we're dehumanizing the people that are suffering from it, I think.
Yeah, and it's a big push around, especially folks in the OCD community and mental health community, to kind of make sure people understand that, there's real consequences and effects that people have to deal with this. And it's not, OCD isn't something you would wish on your worst enemy.
Yeah. I want to get back to you, Chris, to talk a little bit more about your daughter's experience, about your whole family's experience, and also about the film called Unstuck that you helped produce. But first, I just love talking to Brian. Brian's been on the show a number of times. He has a new book coming out called Traveling Rose. And you, Brian, you write really touching, thought-provoking books around autism and other, I don't know if disorder is the word I'm supposed to use, but other challenges that kids and adults face.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, it's great to be back and talking with you again. It's always fun. But yes, that's what I try to do. I came at this from a different angle. As a parent, like Chris, I have a child who is dealing with OCD. So that's what drew me to writing Unraveling Rose, and now the follow-up Traveling Rose. But also, I write books that deal with subjects about how to talk about emotions and things like depression. Because when I became a parent, I realized one of the things I was not really equipped to do, I had not learned it growing up, was how to help my kids through emotional development, how to help them express themselves and be open about what they're feeling and what they're experiencing in a way that, would allow them to get any help that they might need, or to not feel alone in their experience or feel like they have to stuff things down. So the books that I try to write are really about trying to open up conversations between adults and children, hopefully their own children, or, caregivers and children, about these larger issues like obsessive thoughts, OCD, not suppressing emotions, depression. These are all things, not being afraid to use your voice. These are all topics that I try to write about so parents and kids can have a conversation about them.
Yeah. Brian, you mean to tell me that kids growing up in the 60s, 70s, and 80s weren't encouraged to express their emotions and express their sadness, and you're trying to tell me those kids were told to suck it up and get on with it?
That was my experience. Yes. I'm sure other people had different experiences, but I think that was not exclusive to my experience.
I think you're right. I think I know a couple of generations that experienced the same thing. Brian, why do you think that is? I mean, there's reasons for all the dumb things that we do in life, and that's certainly, the idea of suppressing your emotions is, we recognize that it's not the healthiest way to grow up. Why do you think that might have come about?
It's a wonderful question. I mean, I'd like to think I'm, aware of, the best ways to approach this and aware of the best ways to try and handle a situation where a child's having an emotional outburst, let's say. But I'm human. I've been in grocery stores and I've got a 3-year-old who's screaming because they can't have whatever it is I've said no to. And your first instinct is to try to, So I've been there. I get it. I don't know why where that natural inclination comes from to try and quiet that situation, but it's there, and it's just a matter of trying to relearn how to approach these situations in a way where your anger isn't being elevated, and you're also helping your child go through whatever they're going through at the moment.
Yeah, it's so important, and again, it's really difficult to help our kids identify their emotions, understand their emotions, deal with their emotions in a healthy way when we haven't learned it completely ourselves. Chris, can you talk a little bit more about the idea of kids suffering from obsessive thoughts? It's more than just, I love this pop star and I can't get it out of my head and I really want to meet this pop star. It sounds like it's much more torturous than that.
Yeah, it can be a thought that just repeats over and over, and that's the obsession part where you're either fixated with something, an activity, or something that could happen to you, or a catastrophe, or something you might have said that you think might make you bad, or people not like you. It can be all sorts of different things that you might be obsessed about. Physical, it could be images. And then the compulsion part is the thing that the person with OCD will do to relieve that anxiety. One thing that people are often familiar with is like hand washing. One thing that my daughter did a lot with us was just continually confess things to us and ask for reassurance about things she did. I didn't put this in my mouth, or are you sure I didn't touch that? Are you sure I didn't touch that? And the questions can repeat. So you get this anxiety from this obsession, and then you seek the relief from a compulsion, and the compulsion is kind of like a short-term relief. And what happens over time is it just builds and builds and can become more complicated. And that's where you get this, OCD becoming all consuming, taking you away from the things you love and do. And, it can be really tough. We've met a lot of children who, have a lot of hard times voicing their opinion and voicing what's going on in their head and their anxiety and what may be bothering them. Fortunately, my daughter was pretty expressive, and we knew pretty quickly that something was wrong. And she pretty much told us, listen, I don't like what's going on here. And I you need to help me. And I think I need to find help.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank goodness that she was able to do that, and that she had parents who listened and responded. I don't know, Brian, you and I may not have had those parents that responded and listened. We might have gotten the suck it up and deal with it.
Yeah, totally. And again, as Chris was saying, expressing what's going on is so important, and creating an environment where a child feels safe to express themselves is crucial, because that's going to lead to some important conversations, as it did for Chris and it did in our family as well. But also it starts adults down the road of educating themselves, which is crucial in a situation like this. And it also starts, I think, a child down the path of, okay, you can at least, it's not, it's certainly not a cure or a fix, but it starts you down the road of, okay, I can identify what this is. You can start to identify things that you're going through and maybe not feel so alone, to understand that there's people there to support you, and that there's not something, quote, wrong with you, that this is something that can be managed. Mm-hmm. So having those conversations is key. Yeah. It starts you down very healthy paths, I think, on both ends, which is one of the reasons I love Chris's film Unstuck, is because you're hearing the firsthand experience, right? So if you're a child watching this, you're identifying with the child. If you're an adult watching this, you're coming away with a much greater understanding. Yeah. And both are so beneficial.
Yeah. Brian, I'm definitely going to ask Chris to tell us about Unstuck in just a moment. But one of the things, we've talked about here on the podcast, and especially you talked about with you, books can be wonderful mirrors in giving kids a chance to see themselves positively portrayed on the pages of a book. But I think at least as importantly, if not more importantly, books can be a window that allows kids to see others and to gain an empathy. And I'm thinking that the time to start reading books like Traveling Rose is not when there's a problem. Traveling Rose isn't just for a family dealing with these issues. It's for everyone.
Certainly. Again, when you're talking about something as complex as OCD, it's hard in a children's book to capture something like that because it can, as Chris was saying, it can show itself in many different ways, right? So it's not just like, oh, I need things clean and I'm afraid of germs. It can be any number of things. So writing a book that is relatable to children going through any number of those situations was difficult. And also, again, it's not a how-to book. Like you said, it's not for people who are starting to realize that they need this book. It's more about starting conversations. I think the time to read it is before. Also, part of, I think, from reading, I know from my own experiences, having community support. If you have a child that's managing OCD, having community support is really important with the teachers, with other parents, friends. So you're right. It's not just for about a child with OCD identifying with Rose. It can also work for other people getting an idea of what Rose is going through, because they might have a friend that's going through that, mm-hmm. and it might help them better understand that experience.
Yeah. And Chris, going back to what you were talking about the fact that your daughter was expressive, I'm imagining that sitting down and reading a book that gives you a glance into a life of a kid who has these challenging thoughts will make it easier for your kids to kind of say, I'm kind of feeling some of that stuff myself.
100%. The books about kids with OCD, or the books that were available at the time for my daughter, not only help her understand, but she used that. It kind of empowered her to read to her sister, read to her grandparents, and kind of explain, like, see what's going on in this book here? This is what I'm feeling. There was a book at the time called Blink, Blink, Clop, Clop, which my daughter there was a bunch of farm animals that had OCD, and she was able to be like, I'm like this animal. And that was what she was able to read to her, even her friends, to explain what it is. And so I totally see the value in books like Traveling Rose and Unraveling Rose. When Brian and I first connected, that was it, just giving kids the ability to not only identify with a character, identify with something that's going on with them, but also be able to like share that, and it kind of empowers them to talk to their friends and bring it to school for show and tell or whatever it is, to create connections and build support. And kind of to Brian's point earlier, it's lonely. So if you feel if you can identify with a character or somebody in a book, even more power to you. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about Unstuck. As I understand it from our conversation before we started recording, the film talks not only about kids who are struggling with OCD, but also talks about the siblings and the family, because OCD doesn't just affect the kid that is experiencing it. It affects the whole family.
Yeah, that's correct. We wanted to tell the story of how OCD affected kids and the family, as well as how some treatment worked through the eyes of kids. And the more we talked to kids who were going through treatment, the more we realized, like, they're experts. They know their disorder. They know a lot of the medical definitions. So we'll just put the camera in and have them talk and edit it together. And there we go. So it was really great. And you get to feel about, not only how the child with OCD, how they work, but some of the siblings who were either affected as like my youngest daughter was a trigger, and there were times when the kids couldn't be near each other. It was like my oldest daughter would treat my youngest daughter like, she was, kryptonite. Kid couldn't go near her. It scared her to death. And then going through therapy as a family and working through that, you kind of get this, not only an idea that, hey, I understand what they're going through, but also through the film, we try to create hope and inspire people to know that, hey, there is a treatment that works, and, you can overcome the issues that are bothering you.
Yeah. And you were mentioning one of the treatments, and I think you said that this is something that helped your daughter a whole lot. It was exposure and response prevention therapy. Did I get that right? Yeah,
and a very ERP for short, very kind of very, very high level explanation is you slowly over time expose yourself to the thing that bothers you and the thing that causes you anxiety. So for a perfect example, in the film, you'll see my daughter talk about how she was afraid of these trees on block that she thought would kill her and that were poisonous. So the first thing we did wasn't to go run up to the tree and hug it. The first thing we did as part of the exposure therapy was look at pictures of trees on the internet, just random trees, whatever came up in Google. Eventually we got to like putting your toe for one split second on the street. And over 9 months, we kind of got to the point where she was able to almost touch the tree and get to the tree. So very slowly over time, you're kind of exposing yourself to low levels of anxiety and slowly building on that. And then eventually, the way the treatment works, you're kind of almost able to get over your anxiety and do the thing you didn't think you could do, or kind of what we say is fight your fear and overcome it.
Chris, do we know what causes this? Is this trauma related? Is it a, biochemical kind of thing?
There are a lot smarter folks than me researching that. There is a genetic component to OCD. But yeah, it could be a lot of different triggers or reasons. Trauma could be one of it. One thing that we focused on, my family and I, is just like forget about the why and work on the treatment and getting the daughter our help she needed. Because a lot of this, as parents will understand, is like there's not something you can do that'll immediately, like, you can't fix your kid. Your kid has to learn, and anybody with OCD has to learn to do this therapy themselves and to want to overcome what's bothering them. So as a parent, you can be a cheerleader, you can advocate for them, you can make sure they get the help they need. You can make sure that, maybe there's a reward system in place so that, there's some incentives going on. But it's really about, the person with OCD really stepping up and doing hard things to get over what they fear.
Yeah, yeah. So in some ways, Brian, it's doing what our ancient old-fashioned parents told us to do, suck it up and deal with it, but in a much more caring and compassionate and supportive way. We're not asking our kids who are challenged with this to suck it up and deal with it themselves like we might have been. It's like, hey, we can get through this together.
Exactly. In fact, in Traveling Rose, I introduced a new character who becomes Rose's friend. And on the outside, she seems totally the opposite of Rose. She's seems fearless. But then we learn that this new character, her name is Iris, also deals with some of the same things that Rose does. So Rose learns that she's not alone. And this new character, Iris, also helps her see that the way through this is to sort of face those fears, and helps Rose through that. And I think, to sort of build on what Chris was saying, something else, having been in a family that's gone through this, that's important to remember is it's not a straight line from A to Z in terms of, Z is not cure. There are steps forward, and then there will be maybe a step and a half back. There's always a little sort of go forward, a little step back, and that's something else we talk about in Traveling Rose. We're clear. I wanted to be clear to say, there's going to be times that you're going to have an easier experience with ERP, basically, and then there's going to be times when you're going to feel like you failed, but that's okay. You keep at the work. You keep facing it, and you will keep making progress over time. Because it's not, like I said, it's not just you just start on this path and then you get there, per se.
Right. And would it be accurate to say that there is a cure, or it's something that we help kids live with, kids and adults live with and deal with better? Is there a chance that, it's going to pop up in a kid's life in the future?
Chris?
I would say the word cure isn't there. I think it's about kind of learning to understand how OCD affects you, learning some of the things that it might be concerns that you can follow. It's being aware of what's going on, and learning the tools that help you overcome it. And then if a new concern or worry pop up, sometimes they can. My daughter, had a lot of contamination issues. Then there were some more intrusive thoughts that came in as she got older. So it's really about going to that. Okay, I have to do, I have this new fear. This is how I'm going to work to tackle it. And there can be times when it waxes and wanes, and maybe it's not a big part of your life. And then other times it might be more so. And it's about making sure that you're kind of aware of what's going on so that you can, tackle it when it becomes an issue.
Yeah. Chris, if there's a parent out there that's listening to this and have some concerns that this might be something that's affecting their kid or somebody that they love, what's the first piece of advice you would give to that parent?
I think is to educate yourself. There is the International OCD Foundation, which has a great website and lots of resources for parents, kids, and adults to learn kind of the basics about OCD. They have, if you have concerns about what's going on in school, they have a website called Anxiety in the Classroom. So those are two great resources. And I think what the first step is to get educated on kind of how OCD affects people, what different types of what different kinds of OCD are, how it's treated, and, places to kind of go get effective therapy.
Yeah. And Brian, I'm guessing that maybe it would be a great idea for the educators that are listening to this show to not wait until they have a kid arrive in their classroom and find out that this kid is struggling with OCD. Maybe the time to start learning about this and other challenges is now, just so that they're aware and they have a background. And, it's not like, they go to school one morning and the principal says, here, you got this kid and here's the package of information and go at it. It's better to have a foundation, I'm imagining.
Absolutely. Anyone that can educate themselves on this subject is doing a great service. Not only because it destigmatizes things for families. If they feel like they're walking into a school that appreciates what they're going through, they feel more comfortable. Their child's going to feel more comfortable. They can help educate other students about what's going on. And the more of that happens, I think it'll open up possibilities for other families that are going through this, but that might be afraid to say something because they will see it's not anything to be ashamed of or feel guilty about or any of those things. Yeah. So any education, I think, just helps to destigmatize.
Yeah. And in addition, Chris, to finding, and we're going to ask you where we can find Unstuck, in addition to watching Unstuck, in addition to reading Traveling Rose or Unraveling Rose, what are some of the things that we can do during OCD Awareness Week?
Oh, sure. You can watch the film anytime at OCDkidsmovie.com. We also have a resources page where resources like Traveling Rose you can get links to, other books and podcasts. I would say During that week, a lot of foundations have activities where they'll have, now they'll be virtual as well as in-person group meetups, different affiliates around the country that either are related to the OCD Foundation or have their own, affiliates around in different states. So use Professor Google and, you can search for like OCD Awareness Week activities. On Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, there's a lot of live streams where people will put out content to kind of explain what it is. And it's a big awareness to kind of let more people out there know about how OCD affects us and affects the family. But there are, generally pretty much every day of the week, there is something going on where you're either watching, can watch content live or for us, we're going to do a free day for the film. Brian, I think, might be doing some readings. So, lots of, it's a good week to kind of like feel good about what's going on in the world and spread some news around.
Awesome.
About the disorder.
Awesome. And Brian, before we go, we're going to ask you about your website, but too, is there, I know for the different awareness weeks, there are ribbons and puzzle symbols, or is there a color or ribbon that people are coming together to wear to just to let other people know about OCD Awareness Week?
To be honest, I've not heard of a ribbon for OCD Awareness Week. Chris might know. I don't believe so.
I think the color teal is associated with it, but yeah, less not as big as far as like ribbons and things like that. But the color teal, I think a lot of shirts. I seem to recall a lot of shirts that are teal. Yeah.
I think I got a little teal here in my shirt. I got just about every color in my shirt here. Brian, tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Traveling Rose in your great books.
You can go to www.authorbrianray.com.
And is there and you might have said it and it slipped my mind, Chris, is there an OCD national website that we can visit?
Yes, just go to iocdf.org. So iocdf.org. Right on the front page, there's like a banner that kind of scrolls through and carousels, and you'll be able to find the OCD Week activities link there. Even be able to sign up for OCD Camp, which is an event that will go on for parents and kids. And there's even OCD, like a virtual OCD conference that's going to happen in November. So you can find out about all those issues as well as OCD Week.
That's excellent. I love this. I want everybody out there, please, check it out. Go to the website yourself. You are now aware that OCD Awareness Week is happening. And also, please try to spread the word. Tell your neighbors and friends. You don't have to have somebody in your life that's facing this struggle. You know that there are people in your community facing it and struggling with it. Spread the word out there. Let's get families and kids and adults the support and the help and the love that they need. Brian, Chris, thank you so much for educating us, enlightening us. This has been a really fun half hour that we spent together.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having us on.
Oh, yeah, me too. This was great. Great, Brian. Always great to see you.
Great to see you too, Chris.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Scott Gabala, Broxholm. He'll be here to celebrate the Ellie phone book. It's a really fun conversation. You don't want to miss it. Hey, I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we're going to start by thanking our guests, Brian Wray and Chris Baier. Please take the time to learn more about OCD, and please be sure to share the different information and resources that we learned about today. Also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Mirabella Q. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.